The planter shattered against the floor with a dry crack that echoed in my ears like thunder. Black soil scattered across Fabiana's white kitchen tile, and among the broken ceramic shards, something small and rectangular gleamed in the sunlight streaming through the window. A USB drive. There, hidden in the soil of the planter, my daughter had warned me 1,000 times not to touch, not to move, that it was very delicate. My hands trembled as I picked it up. Why would Fabiana hide a USB drive in the soil of a plant? My heart began to beat faster. Fabiana had traveled for work, as usual, leaving me in charge of her house for a week. "Mom, water the plants. But don't move anything, especially the large planter in the kitchen," she had told me in that cold voice she used with me lately. I just wanted her plants to get more sunlight, that was all. I never thought a simple accident would change everything I thought I knew about the daughter I bore, raised, and loved more than my own life. I stood there, the USB drive in my hand, staring at the mess of dirt and ceramic at my feet. 70 years of life have taught me that when someone hides something with such care, it's usually because they don't want anyone to find it. And when your own daughter forbids you to touch something specific, it's because there's a secret that must not come to light. My knees began to tremble. Not from age, but from the premonition that pierced my chest like a cold dagger. My name is Lourdes Goncalves. I am 70 years old, and until 3 days ago, I thought I knew my only daughter. I thought that after a lifetime of sacrificing for her, working 2 jobs to give her everything I never had, selling the few pieces of jewelry I inherited from my mother so she could go to school, I thought that created an unbreakable bond between us. But there are moments in life when the ground opens up beneath your feet and you discover that the person you love most in this world, the person for whom you would give your last breath, is capable of betraying you in ways you never imagined. I walked to my neighbor Maria's apartment, on the floor below, with the USB drive clutched in my fist as if it were a dangerous diamond. Maria had a computer. I barely knew how to use my old phone for calls, but I knew I needed to see what was inside that small thing my daughter had hidden with such secrecy. I knocked on the door with trembling knuckles. "Maria, can you help me with something?" "I need to see what's on this," I said, showing her the USB drive. She looked at me strangely but let me in. Her computer was on at the dining room table. Maria plugged in the drive, and the screen filled with files, photos, documents, folders with names I didn't understand. "What are you looking for, Lourdes?" she asked. "I don't know," I murmured, "but I know it's important." We started opening the files one by one. First came photos of my house. The house where I have lived for 30 years, where I raised Fabiana, where I planned to die in peace. But these weren't normal photos. They were like the ones real estate agents take. Professional pictures of every room, the garden, the facade. My blood ran cold. Why would Fabiana have photos like that of my house? Then Maria opened a folder that said, "Legal documents." My world stopped. There were the papers for my house, but something was terribly wrong. The name on the documents wasn't mine, it was Fabiana's. My house, the house I bought with the sweat of 30 years of work, was listed in my daughter's name. How was that possible? When had this happened? My eyes filled with tears, but I kept staring at the screen, hypnotized by a nightmare I couldn't stop. "This can't be," I whispered. Maria put her hand on my shoulder, but I could barely breathe. She kept clicking, and more documents appeared. Sales contracts. My daughter had put my house up for sale. My house. Without telling me anything, without asking me anything. As if I were a thing, a nuisance to be gotten rid of. The date on the contract was from 6 months ago. 6 months that Fabiana had been planning to sell the house where I lived without saying a single word to me. But the worst was yet to come. Maria opened a chat file, conversations between Fabiana and someone named Teodoro Realtor. I read every word as if it were poison entering through my eyes. "Everything is ready," my daughter wrote. "The papers have been in my name for months. The old lady doesn't suspect a thing. As soon as I sell the house, I'm sending her to a nursing home and disappearing. I'm tired of pretending I love her." The words the old lady echoed in my head like a painful refrain. That's what she called me. That's what she thought of me. The old lady. Tears streamed down my cheeks, but I couldn't tear my eyes from the screen. There were more messages, Tell her you're traveling for work for another week. That you need her to watch your house, this Teodoro person suggested. Perfect, Fabiana replied. While she's there watering plants like an idiot, I'll be closing the sale. By the time she gets back, there will be nothing she can do. Every word was a stab in my mother's heart. How could a daughter speak like that about the woman who brought her into the world? Maria closed the computer because she couldn't bear to watch my pain any longer. I just sat there, my hands on the table, feeling everything I had built over 70 years of life crumble. My daughter, my only family, the little girl I held in my arms when she had a fever, the rebellious teenager I defended when everyone criticized her, the adult woman I still felt proud of every time someone asked about her, that same person was robbing me. Not just of my house, she was robbing me of my dignity, my future, my place in the world. I returned to Fabiana's apartment, walking like a zombie. I picked up the pieces of the broken planter and cleaned the dirt from the floor with trembling hands. But I kept the USB drive in my pocket. It was the proof that everything I had just discovered was real, not a nightmare I could wake up from. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay awake in the guest room bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering when I had lost my daughter. When had she become a stranger capable of calling me the old lady and planning my banishment as if I were trash to be thrown out? The next day, my phone rang. It was Fabiana. "Hi, Mom. How is everything over there? Are the plants okay?" Her voice sounded normal, even affectionate, as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't spent the last 6 months planning to destroy me. "Everything is fine, my daughter," I replied in the calmest voice I could feign. "Perfect," she said. "I'll be back in 3 days. I love you, Mom. I love you." How easy it was for her to say those words while she had a knife twisted in my back. I hung up the phone and looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. I saw a 70-year-old woman, wrinkled, tired, with gray hair and hands marked by decades of hard work. But for the first time in a long time, I also saw something else in my eyes. I saw rage. I saw determination. I saw a woman who was not going to let herself be trampled without a fight. Fabiana thought she was smarter than her old, idiotic mother. She thought she could rob me and abandon me without consequences. She was wrong. 35 years ago, when Fabiana was just 2 years old, I worked for 18 hours straight cleaning offices to pay for the doctor when she had bronchitis. I remember her hot little hands clinging to my blouse as I carried her on the bus to the hospital at 3 o'clock in the morning. "Mommy," she said with her hoarse little voice, "don't leave me." I never left her. Never. That night, I promised that my daughter would never experience the hardships I went through as a child, that she would have everything I couldn't have, that she would be happy. During the first years of her life, Fabiana was my shadow. She followed me all over the house, helped me fold laundry by climbing onto the bed and making uneven little piles that I had to fix later. When she turned 5, she asked me to teach her how to make tortillas. We spent the whole afternoon in the kitchen, her hands covered in flour, me guiding her with infinite patience. "When I grow up, I'm going to cook for you, Mommy," she promised. "I'm going to take care of you always." Her little eyes shone with the kind of sincerity only children have when they speak the purest truth. Her school years were the hardest of my life. I worked during the day cleaning houses and at night sewing dresses for a seamstress downtown. I would come home with my fingers bleeding from so many needle pricks, but it was worth it when I saw Fabiana doing her homework at the kitchen table, concentrating, trying her best. She always got good grades. The teachers told me she was very smart, that she had a future. I swelled with pride. My daughter would be someone important in life. My sacrifice would have meaning. When Fabiana turned 15, she wanted a big party. All her friends had had quinceañeras with expensive dresses, elegant halls, professional photographers. I knew we didn't have the money for that, but I couldn't disappoint her. I sold the gold earrings my mother had left me as an inheritance, the only valuable objects I owned in the world. With that money, I rented a small hall, bought her a pink dress that made her look like a princess, and hired a local band. The night of her party, when I saw her dancing with her friends, radiant with happiness, I knew it had been worth it. "Thank you, Mommy," she said, hugging me. "You're the best mom in the world." The college years demanded even more sacrifice. Fabiana studied business administration at an expensive private university. I had to take out loans, work extra weekends, and give up any personal indulgence. While other women my age were buying new clothes or going out with friends, I counted every penny to make sure Fabiana had books, supplies, and money for her expenses. We lived on beans and rice most days, but she never knew. I always told her I had already eaten when I came home late from work. During those college years, I started to notice the first changes in her. She didn't tell me as much about her day anymore. She no longer sat with me at night to watch television like she used to. When she came home, she would lock herself in her room with her computer. "I'm studying, Mommy," she'd say when I knocked on her door to offer her something to eat. I thought it was normal, that she was growing up, becoming independent. I convinced myself it was natural for a 20-year-old girl to want her space. I didn't know she was already starting to see me as an obstacle in her life. When she graduated, I took on an extra part-time job to afford a graduation party for her. We invited all our relatives, the neighbors, her classmates. I was so proud I couldn't hold back the tears when I saw her receive her diploma. "We did it, my girl," I whispered in her ear when she hugged me. "We did it." But she pulled away from me quickly, as if she were embarrassed to be seen getting emotional with her old mother. I should have paid attention to that sign, but I was too blinded by motherly love to see what was already happening. Her first job was at a large company downtown. She started earning good money, more than I had ever earned in my entire life. At first, she helped me with some of the household expenses, but little by little, she stopped. "Mommy, I need to save for my future," she would say. "You understand, right?" I understood. Of course I understood. I wanted her to have financial stability, to never go through the difficulties I had. I kept working my double shifts to maintain the house where we both lived. I remained the same self-sacrificing mother I had always been. On weekends, Fabiana started going out more with her new coworkers. She would come home late, sometimes not until the next day. "They're work commitments, Mommy," she would explain. "Networking, important connections for my career." I didn't really understand those English words, but I trusted her. She had always been a responsible, intelligent daughter. If she said it was important for her job, it had to be true. It never occurred to me that she could be lying to me. It never occurred to me that she might be ashamed of me in front of her new, successful friends. One day she came home with the news that she had found an apartment for herself. "It's time for me to be independent, Mommy," she said. "I'm an adult now. I need my own space." My heart broke into pieces, but I tried to smile. It was normal, I told myself. Children grow up and leave. It's the natural cycle of life. I helped her pack her things, cooked her favorite meals for her to take, gave her extra money for moving expenses. "I'll visit you often," she promised. "And you can come to my apartment whenever you want. You'll always be welcome." At first, she did visit. Every Sunday she came for lunch, told me about her work, asked about my health, but the visits became less frequent. Every 2 weeks, then every month, then only on special occasions. When I called her, she was always busy. "I'll call you back, Mommy," she'd say. "I'm in an important meeting," but later never came. I would wait by the phone, but it wouldn't ring. I started to feel invisible in my own daughter's life. The last 2 years were the worst. Fabiana barely visited, barely called. When we did see each other, she seemed impatient, as if being with me was a heavy obligation she had to fulfill. She no longer asked how I was, no longer took an interest in my life. The entire conversation revolved around her job, her plans, her future. I was just a silent spectator in her brilliant and successful life. The little girl who once promised to always take care of me had become a woman who seemed to count the minutes until she could get away from me. But I still loved her. I kept making excuses for her coldness, her distance, her indifference. "She's busy building her career," I would tell myself. "When things settle down a bit, she'll be affectionate again like she used to be." I clung to the few moments of tenderness she gave me, like breadcrumbs a mother starved for love gratefully collects. I didn't want to see what was really happening. I didn't want to accept that my daughter had become a stranger who tolerated me out of obligation. The last time we had spoken before this work trip, 2 weeks ago, I had mentioned that my knees were hurting a lot, that the doctor had told me I needed a surgery I couldn't afford. I hoped she would offer to help, as I had always helped her. But she just said, "Oh, Mommy, doctors always exaggerate. I'm sure it's not as serious as they say. Just take some pills and you'll see. It'll go away." She hung up the phone without asking anything else, without offering to go with me to the doctor, without showing the slightest concern for my health. Now, sitting in her apartment, with the USB drive in my pocket and the truth scattered across my heart like broken glass, I understand that it wasn't a gradual process. It wasn't that she slowly stopped loving me. The reality is much crueler. Fabiana never really loved me. She only needed me. And now that she no longer needs me, now that she has everything she wanted, she is getting rid of me, like someone who throws away an old rag that is no longer useful. All the love I thought I saw in her eyes all these years was just convenience in disguise. That same night, as I reviewed the files on the USB drive again and again on Maria's computer, I found something that chilled me to the bone, a folder called Complete Plan. Inside was a text document with dates, strategies, detailed steps. My daughter had planned my destruction as if it were a work project. With the same coldness she used to organize her presentations at the office, she had designed a way to steal everything from me and make me disappear from her life forever. The document began like this: Operation Freedom. Steps to get rid of Mom for good. I had to read that line 3 times before I could process it. Operation Freedom. That's what she called the mission to destroy her own mother. As if I were a prison from which she needed to escape. As if my 70 years of life, the 35 years I dedicated to raising and loving her, were chains that oppressed her. To her, my love was a prison. My existence was an obstacle to her freedom. Step 1. Gain legal power over the house, the document read. Convince Mom to sign some papers, to protect the property from taxes. She doesn't understand anything about laws. It will be easy. I then remembered that afternoon 8 months ago, when Fabiana came to visit with a folder full of documents. "Mommy, I brought some papers for you to sign," she had said with a smile that I now understand was completely fake. "It's to protect the house from problems with the government." Purely a legal formality, but an important one. I had trusted her completely. "What do I need to sign, my girl?" I asked. She pointed to several lines. She explained it to me with words I didn't understand, but that sounded important. "Here, here, and here, Mommy. This is so you'll never have problems with the house, so that it's legally protected." I signed everything without reading, without asking, without doubting. How could I doubt my own daughter? How could I suspect that those papers were transferring ownership of my house to her name? That with my own signature, I was gifting her everything I had worked for over 30 years. Step 2. Wait 6 months for the papers to be fully processed, the document continued. Find a discreet buyer who will pay in cash to avoid complications. Teodoro knows investors who buy old houses to demolish and build condos. Old house. That's how she described the home, where she had grown up, where she had taken her first steps, where she had celebrated every childhood birthday. To her, it wasn't a home full of memories. It was just an old house that was worth money. Step 3. Invent a prolonged work trip to keep Mom distracted while the sale is finalized, I kept reading. Ask her to watch my apartment so she won't be at her house when the buyers come for inspections. There I was, taking care of her plants like an idiot, while strangers walked through my house, evaluating how much they could pay for it. While I was watering her flowers with motherly love, my own daughter was selling the roof under which I slept every night. Step 4. Once the house is sold, present her with the nursing home options, the document read, my hands shaking. There's a public one on the outskirts of the city that accepts elderly people with no resources. It's basic, but sufficient for her. I'll tell her it's temporary while we sort out the house situation, but obviously it will be permanent. My daughter had researched nursing homes for me. She had visited places to lock up her mother, as if I were an animal to be dropped off at a shelter. And she had chosen the cheapest, most remote, most miserable one. Step 5. Change my phone number and move to another city, the plan concluded. With the money from the sale, I can buy a better apartment in a place where no one knows me as Lourdes' daughter. Start fresh, with no family burdens, no responsibilities from the past. No family burdens. That's what she called me. A burden. A weight that had to be dropped in order to fly. The woman who had given her life, who had worked until she bled to give her an education, who had given up everything to see her succeed, was just a burden she had to be free of. But there was more. I found a folder with conversations between Fabiana and her friends where she talked about me as if I were an embarrassment. "I can't bring you guys to meet my mom," she wrote in a group chat. "She lives in an old house. She talks like a peasant. She doesn't understand anything about the modern world. I'm embarrassed for them to see her." Embarrassed. My own daughter was embarrassed of me, of the woman who had raised her with pride, who had bragged about her to all the neighbors, who had worked 18 hours a day so she could study at a private university. "You guys don't understand how exhausting it is to have such a primitive mother," she continued writing. "She's always asking obvious questions. She doesn't know how to use technology. She dresses like a small-town lady. When people ask about my family, I make up that my parents died. It's easier than explaining that I have a mother who looks like she's straight out of the 1950s. Each word was a stab. My daughter would rather say I was dead than admit I was her mother. In another conversation, with a friend named Sophia, Fabiana wrote, "My mom thinks I owe her something because she raised me and paid for my education. She doesn't get that it was her obligation as a mother. Nobody asked her to have a child if she couldn't support her without sacrificing so much. Now she wants me to support her, to take care of her, to be her cane in old age. But I have my own life to live." Obligation. My love, my sacrifice, my entire life dedicated to her, had been just an obligation that I fulfilled poorly because I sacrificed too much. "I'm going to teach her a lesson," she wrote in another message. "I'm going to show her that she can't depend on me forever, that she has to learn to stand on her own 2 feet, like I did, like she did." As if she had built her life from scratch, without help, without support, without a mother who sold even her most precious memories to pay for her education. To Fabiana, she was a successful, self-made woman. I was just an obstacle that had appeared on her path to success. I also found screenshots from her social media where she posted phrases like, "I learned to be strong because I had no one to protect me. I am an independent woman who made herself. Thank you, life, for teaching me. I can only count on myself." Thousands of people liked these lies. They congratulated her for being so brave and self-sufficient. As I read those words, I remembered the nights I stayed up watching over her when she had a fever, the Sundays I spent sewing to buy her new clothes, the years I lived on tortillas and beans so she could eat better. But what hurt the most was finding a chat where someone asked if she didn't feel guilty about abandoning her mother. Her response broke my soul. "Guilty? Why should I feel guilty? She chose to be a mother. I didn't choose to be born. She had to fulfill her responsibility to raise me. Now I have to fulfill my responsibility to live my own life. I owe her nothing more than gratitude. And I've already given her that for years by pretending to care. Pretending to care. All those hugs, those smiles, those affectionate words she had given me over the last few years had been an act, cheap theater, to keep me calm while she planned my destruction. Every "I love you, Mommy" had been a lie. Every "thank you for everything you did for me" had been hypocrisy. My daughter was a consummate actress who had deceived her own mother for years, making me believe there was still love between us. The last conversation I found was from 3 days ago, right when this work trip began. "Everything is ready," she wrote to Teodoro. "The buyers are inspecting the house tomorrow while my mom is at my apartment. If everything goes well, we sign on Friday, and by Monday the money will be in my account. By next weekend, the old lady will be in the nursing home, and I will be free forever." Free forever. Those words rang in my head like funeral bells. My own daughter was celebrating my banishment as if it were her college graduation. I closed the computer and sat there in Maria's living room, feeling every certainty in my life crumble like sandcastles. I had not only lost my house, I had not only lost my savings, I had lost something much more valuable. I had lost the illusion that I had a daughter who loved me. For 70 years, I had believed in a mother's love as the most powerful force in the universe. Now I discovered that this love could be one-sided, that it could be despised, that it could be used as a weapon to destroy the one who gave it most. But as I walked back to Fabiana's apartment, with the USB drive tucked in my pocket like a black diamond full of sand, something began to change inside me. The sadness was transforming into something stronger, something more dangerous. Something my daughter did not expect from her old, idiotic mother. It was transforming into a determination as cold as ice. Fabiana had underestimated the woman who had raised her. She had forgotten that to survive 70 years in this cruel world, a woman needs to be stronger than she appears. The following days were the loneliest of my life, but also the most revealing. I stayed in Fabiana's apartment like a ghost, surrounded by her expensive things, her elegant furniture, her photographs where she appeared smiling with friends she had never introduced to me. In every photo she looked happy, successful, radiant. I was in none of them. It was as if she had erased my existence from her life long before she planned to physically erase me from this world. During the day, I walked through her apartment, trying to find any sign that something of the girl I had raised still remained. I looked for childhood photos, letters she might have written to me, any gift I might have given her that she had kept out of affection. I found nothing. Absolutely nothing to indicate that I had ever been important in her life. It was like living in the house of a stranger who happened to share my last name. In her refrigerator, there were photos with friends, with coworkers, with men I suppose were her boyfriends over the years. But not a single photo of me, not even an old family picture hidden behind the others. I had been completely eradicated from her present. For anyone who entered her apartment, Fabiana was a young, successful woman, with no family, no past, no mother. As if she had been born from nothing at the age of 25, already formed and independent. That first night, after discovering the truth, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the guest room bed, looking out the window at the illuminated city, trying to understand when I had lost my daughter. Was it when she started college and met wealthy people? Was it when she got her first job and felt superior to me? Or had she always been this way, and I had been blinded by motherly love all these years? I remembered every sign I had ignored, every hurtful comment I had excused, every gesture of contempt I had interpreted as work stress. Like the time I brought food to her office because she was working late, and she met me at the reception without inviting me up. "Thanks, Mommy, but I'm very busy," she said, taking the bag of food without even opening it to see what I had brought her. "I'll call you later." She never called. When I asked her days later if she had liked the food, she said she didn't remember eating anything special that week. Or like that Christmas when I invited some neighbors over for dinner at our house, and she arrived late, looking annoyed, greeted everyone perfunctorily, and left early, making up a work excuse. "It's just that I don't fit in with those people, Mommy," she explained later. "We have nothing in common. Those people were the people who had stood by me for years, who had comforted me when she didn't show up, who had been more of a family to me than my own daughter. But to her, they were inferior people, not worth her time." On the second day in her apartment, I began to go through everything systematically, not to snoop, but to understand who I was really dealing with. In her drawers, I found receipts for purchases that cost more than my salary for 3 months. Shoes, handbags, clothes from brands whose names I couldn't even pronounce. While I lived counting pennies to pay the utility bills, she was spending fortunes on whims she used once, and then forgot. I also found bank statements she had left lying in a drawer. My daughter had more money saved than I had seen in my entire life. She could have helped me with the knee surgery without even feeling the expense. She could have given me a dignified life in my final years without affecting her lifestyle in the slightest. But she had chosen to let me suffer while she lived like a princess. The money wasn't the problem. The problem was that I wasn't worth it to her. On her personal computer, which she had left on, I found more conversations that confirmed what I already knew but what still hurt to read. In a group chat with her work friends, someone asked why she never talked about her family. "Because I don't have a real family," Fabiana replied. "I have a biological mother, but emotionally we're strangers. She lives in a different world than I do. It's like we're from different species." "She never invites you to lunch with us?" another friend asked. "Never," Fabiana replied. "It would be super awkward. You guys wouldn't understand what she talks about, and she wouldn't understand what we talk about. Besides, she's always asking to borrow money or making up medical emergencies to make me feel guilty and help her financially. Asking to borrow money, making up medical emergencies." That's how she described my few and desperate requests for help when I genuinely couldn't afford something important. In another chat, she told someone named Ricardo, "My mother is one of those women who think that just because they gave birth to you, You have to support them for the rest of their lives. She doesn't understand that I have my own responsibilities, my own expenses, my own future to secure. She constantly plays the victim and makes me feel guilty for being successful. She's toxic, but it's hard to cut her off completely because society judges you if you abandon your mother. Toxic, playing the victim, making her feel guilty for being successful. Every word was a lie constructed to justify her cruelty. But what hurt me the most was finding a chat where someone asked if she didn't feel lonely without close family. On the contrary, she wrote, I feel free. Not having strong family ties allows me to make decisions based on what's best for me, not on feelings of guilt or inherited responsibilities. My mother always told me that family is the most important thing, but I learned that the most important thing is yourself. Family can be a burden that holds you back from growing. Those words pierced me like bullets. Family can be a burden that holds you back from growing. That's what she thought of us, of the mother-daughter relationship, of the love I thought we shared. To her, loving me had been an obstacle to her personal growth. Taking care of me had been a chain that tied her to the past. Valuing me had been a weakness she needed to overcome, to become the successful woman she wanted to be. On the third day, I began to methodically save evidence. I photographed every document, every conversation, every piece of evidence of the betrayal with my phone. At first, my hands shook, and I didn't know how to use the phone's camera very well, but necessity taught me quickly. I needed that proof. I didn't know exactly what for, but I had a feeling I would need it. I also began to remember strange behaviors from Fabiana over the last few months that now made sense. Like the time she came to visit and started measuring the rooms with a tape measure, telling me she wanted to help me reorganize the space to be more functional. Or how she insisted I give her a copy of all the house keys, just in case you ever have an emergency and I need to get in. Or when she convinced me to open a joint bank account to make any future transactions easier. Every memory became a piece of the puzzle Fabiana had been assembling for months. While I thought she was being a daughter concerned for my well-being, she was preparing the ground to steal everything from me. Every gesture of apparent affection had been calculated. Every show of interest in my life had had a specific goal. My daughter was a professional con artist, and I had been her easiest victim because I trusted her blindly. On the fourth day, Fabiana called me as she did every day to keep up her act. "Hi, Mommy. How are you? Is everything okay over there?" Her voice sounded relaxed, even cheerful. "Everything's fine, my girl," I replied with the same false calm I had been practicing. "When are you coming back?" "Tomorrow night," she said. "This trip has been very productive. I think some very good things will come out of these days." Very productive. Yes, it must have been very productive to sell her mother's house and secure her spot in the nursing home. "I miss you, Mommy," she said before hanging up. "You miss me too, right?" "Of course, my girl," I lied. "I miss you very much." But the truth was, I didn't miss her anymore. The daughter I loved, the little girl I had raised with so much affection, had died years ago. The woman who would return tomorrow was a stranger who bore my daughter's name but had lost everything that once made me love her. That night, my last night alone in her apartment, I stayed awake planning. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but I knew I was not going to let her send me to a nursing home as if I were trash to be thrown away. I was not going to let her steal the house I had worked for 30 years to own. I was not going to let her erase me from existence as if I had never been important in her life. I was 70 years old, but I wasn't dead yet, and as long as I had breath in my lungs, I was going to fight. Fabiana had made a fatal mistake. She had underestimated her mother. She thought I was an old, ignorant, helpless woman, easy to manipulate and destroy. But she had forgotten that women of my generation had survived decades of hardships she couldn't even imagine. We had raised children while barely being children ourselves. We had worked jobs that broke our bodies and souls to provide for our families. We had endured loss, betrayal, abandonment, and we had remained standing. My daughter was about to discover that the woman who had raised her was not the weak victim she believed her to be. She was about to discover that when a 70-year-old mother decides to fight back, she can be more dangerous than any enemy she had ever faced in her successful corporate life. She was about to learn that a mother's love, when it turns into a mother's justice, is an unstoppable force that can move mountains and destroy empires built on lies. The next morning, I woke up with a mental clarity I hadn't felt in years. For the first time in a long time, I knew exactly what I had to do. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to act with the quiet intelligence that only 70 years of life experience can give. Fabiana would return that night, expecting to find an obedient mother ready to be sent to a nursing home. Instead, she would find a woman who had reclaimed her power. My first stop was the Public Property Records Office. I took the earliest bus and arrived just as they were opening. The young woman at the counter looked at me with that mix of patience and condescension that young people use with the elderly. "How can I help you, ma'am?" "I need to see the documents for my house," I said, handing her the address written on a piece of paper. "I want to know exactly what they say and when the last changes were made." I waited for 40 minutes on a hard plastic chair, but it was worth it. The young woman returned with a thick folder and a surprised expression. "Ma'am, according to these documents, this property is no longer in your name. It was transferred 8 months ago to a Fabiana Goncalves. Did you sign any transfer document?" "Yes," I admitted, "but I was told it was to protect the house from taxes." The girl shook her head. "No, ma'am, this is a full transfer of ownership. You are no longer the owner of that house." I requested copies of all the documents, every paper, every signature, every official seal. I paid for the copies with the money I had saved for emergencies and left there with a folder full of evidence. Now I had official proof that my daughter had tricked me into signing documents I didn't understand. That's called fraud. And fraud is a crime, even when committed by a daughter against her mother. My second stop was a lawyer's office. I had searched online from Maria's phone for lawyers who handled family fraud cases. I found one who offered a free consultation for senior citizens. His name was Teodoro Perez, and in a twist of fate, he had the same first name as my daughter's real estate accomplice. But this Teodoro was going to be on my side. Mr. Perez was a man in his 50s with a kind face and respectful manners. When I explained my situation and showed him the evidence I had gathered, his expression turned serious. "Mrs. Goncalves, this is a clear case of document fraud, aggravated by the family relationship. Your daughter deceived you into signing documents by misrepresenting the information about what you were signing. This is a criminal offense, not just a civil one." "What can I do?" I asked. "We can get your house back," he explained. "We have enough evidence to prove that the transfer was made through deception. But I need you to bring me more proof of your daughter's intentions. Do you have anything that shows she planned to sell the house without your consent?" I smiled for the first time in days. "I have much more than that, sir." I showed him some of the photographs I had taken of the conversations from the USB drive. His eyes widened as he read the messages where Fabiana described her entire plan. "This is pure gold for the case," he murmured. "Here she is, admitting to the fraud, documenting her intentions, even mocking you. With this, we not only get your house back, but we can also press criminal charges against her." He explained that he needed the original USB drive as evidence and that we had to act quickly before Fabiana completed the sale. I left the office with a sense of power I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't revenge I felt. It was justice. The difference is important. Revenge is emotional, hot, destructive. Justice is cold, calculated, restorative. I didn't want to destroy Fabiana out of spite. I wanted to recover what was rightfully mine and teach her that actions have consequences, even when you commit them against your own mother. My third stop was the bank where Fabiana had her accounts. I couldn't access her private information, but I could talk to the manager about the house transfers. I explained that I was a victim of family fraud and that I needed to know if they had processed any payments related to the sale of my property. The manager was very kind and explained that they could freeze any account if a court order for fraud was presented. "If your daughter receives money from the sale of a fraudulently obtained property," he explained, "that money can be seized and returned to the victim of the fraud. That is, to you." He gave me the necessary forms for the lawyer to start the process of a preemptive account freeze. One more step in my silent plan to reclaim what was mine. I returned to Fabiana's apartment at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, loaded with copies, forms, phone numbers of officials, and a clear legal strategy. I sat on her expensive sofa, surrounded by her elegant things bought with money that could have been used to help her mother, and I waited. For the first time in days, I felt in control of the situation. At 7 o'clock in the evening, her key turned in the lock. "Hi, Mommy," she called from the entrance with that fake voice I now recognized perfectly. "I'm back. How did you behave while I was away?" She entered the living room laden with suitcases, smiling at me with the smile of a consummate actress. "I behaved very well, my girl," I replied calmly. "I learned many new things these past few days." "Oh, really? Like what?" she asked, as she set down her suitcases and came over to give me a kiss on the cheek. The same hypocritical kiss as always. "I learned how to use computers," I said, looking her directly in the eyes. "I learned about legal documents. I learned about USB drives. Very interesting things for a woman my age, don't you think?" Something in her expression shifted. A shadow of concern crossed her eyes for a split second, but she quickly smiled again. "That's great, Mommy. It's never too late to learn new things." She headed towards the kitchen, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. She knew something had changed, but she didn't yet know how much I had discovered. "Fabiana," I called out in a serene voice. "We need to talk. We need to talk," I repeated when she stopped at the kitchen entrance. Fabiana turned to me with that smile I knew so well, that perfect mask she had perfected over years to deceive me. "Of course, Mommy. What do you want to talk about? Everything okay with the plants? I hope you didn't have any trouble watering them." Her voice sounded relaxed, but I could see her hands fidgeting nervously, how she avoided looking me directly in the eye. "The plants are perfect," I said, slowly getting up from the sofa. "But I had a little accident with one of the planters." I saw her turn slightly pale, though she tried to hide it. "An accident? Which planter, Mommy?" "The large one in the kitchen," I replied, observing every micro-expression on her face. "The one you told me not to touch because it was very delicate. It slipped from my hands when I was moving it. To get more Sunday," Fabiana swallowed, almost imperceptibly. "Did it break?" "Don't worry, Mommy. Planters can be replaced. It's not important." But her eyes said otherwise. Her eyes were calculating, evaluating, trying to determine how much I had discovered in that scattered soil. "You're right," I said with a calmness that surprised even me. "Planters can be replaced, but some things can't be replaced so easily. Like trust, for example." "I don't know what you're talking about, Mommy," she murmured, but her voice no longer sounded so confident. She walked into the kitchen, and I followed. I could see her looking around for any sign of the broken planter, any evidence of what had really happened. I had cleaned up so well that there wasn't a trace of dirt on the floor, but I had also cleaned up so well that there was no trace of the USB drive that had been hidden there for months. "It was very interesting what I found in the soil, Fabiana," I said as she pretended to check the other plants. "I never thought plants could keep such big secrets." She turned to me with eyes that could no longer hide her worry. "What did you find, Mommy?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Soil," I answered. "Just soil. What else could there be in a pot?" For a moment, I thought she was going to confess everything. I saw her struggling internally, weighing whether to maintain the lie or change her strategy. But Fabiana was too calculating to break down so easily. "You're right, Mommy. Just soil. You scared me for a moment. I thought you found some weird bug or something." She smiled again, but this time the smile didn't reach her eyes. While she feigned normalcy, I observed every detail of her behavior. The way her hands trembled slightly when she thought I wasn't looking, how she compulsively checked her phone every few minutes, probably waiting for news about the sale of my house, how she bit her lower lip when she thought I wasn't watching, a nervous tic she'd had since she was a child when she knew she had done something wrong. "You know what, Mommy?" she said suddenly, with exaggerated cheerfulness. "I think it's time we talked about your future, about some important decisions we need to make together." Here it came, the moment she had been rehearsing for months. The conversation where she was going to explain why I had to go to a nursing home temporarily while we sorted out some legal issues with the house. "That sounds perfect, my girl," I replied, sitting down at the kitchen table. "I also have some important things to tell you. Things I learned these past few days. Things about documents, about property transfers, about plans that sometimes turn out differently than one imagines." I saw her tense up like a cornered animal deciding whether to attack or flee. "Mommy, I've noticed you've been very confused lately," she said, adopting a condescending tone she had likely practiced in front of a mirror. "I think your age is affecting you more than we want to admit. Sometimes you say things that don't make much sense." There it was. The strategy to make me seem like a senile old woman whose words had no credibility. How convenient it would be for her if everyone believed her mother had lost her mind. It could be, I admitted, feigning insecurity. At 70 years old, one gets confused easily. For example, yesterday I found some papers in my house that I don't remember signing. Documents that, according to the Property Records Office, transfer my house to your name. But I'm sure it's just my elderly confusion, right? Her mask fell away completely. For the first time in years, I saw her true face cold, calculating, without a trace of the love I once thought I saw there. "Mom," she said, in a voice that no longer feigned affection, "we need to talk seriously." "Yes, it's true the house is in my name now. I did it to protect you, to protect your assets from legal problems that could arise in the future. It's normal that at your age, you don't understand these complicated procedures. Protect me." What an interesting word she had chosen to describe her theft. "I understand it might seem confusing," she continued in that cold voice, I now recognized as her true personality, "but it was the right decision. In fact, I've already found a buyer for the house, an investor who is willing to pay very well for the property. With that money, we can ensure you have a dignified old age in a specialized facility where you'll be cared for as you deserve." A specialized facility. What an elegant way to say nursing home. "And where would you live, my girl?" I asked, maintaining my tone of senile confusion. "I'll be moving to another city for work. It's an incredible opportunity I can't pass up. But don't worry, I'll visit you whenever I can. Whenever I can." Translation: never. "The place I found for you is very good," she continued, explaining her plan as if it were an act of filial love. "They have nurses 24 hours a day, activities for people your age, 3 meals a day. You'll be much better cared for than living alone in that old house that needs more repairs every day." Old house. Her words confirmed that I had correctly read the conversations on the USB drive. But what struck me most was the ease with which she lied, the naturalness with which she turned a theft into an act of protection, an abandonment into an act of love, a betrayal into a responsible decision. My daughter was a consummate sociopath who had perfected the art of emotional manipulation, and I had been her perfect victim for years because I trusted her blindly. "When do I have to leave?" I asked, feigning resignation. On Monday, she replied with a smile that was meant to be reassuring. "I've already spoken with the administration of the facility, and they have a room available for you. This weekend, we can pack your most important things. You don't need to bring much. They provide all the basics there. This weekend, in 3 days, my daughter planned to erase me from her life forever." "Okay, my daughter," I said, getting up from the table. "If you think it's what's best for me, I trust your judgment. You've always been smarter than me about these things." I saw her relax immediately. She had managed to convince the ignorant old woman to accept her fate without a fight. Everything was going according to her perfect plan. That night, while Fabiana silently celebrated her apparent victory, I lay awake in the guest room, going over every detail of my own strategy. Tomorrow would be Saturday. She expected to spend the weekend packing my belongings and preparing my deportation to the nursing home. Instead, she would wake up to a surprise she had never considered in her calculations. A mother who had decided to fight back. Saturday dawned with a gray, overcast sky, as if even the weather knew that on this day everything was going to change forever. Fabiana woke up late, relaxed, with that smile of satisfaction of someone who believes they have everything figured out. She made me breakfast as if it were a gesture of kindness, when in reality it was the farewell breakfast of someone condemned to die. "Good morning, Mommy. Did you sleep well? Today we're going to start organizing your things for the move on Monday." "Good morning, my girl," I replied with the same tranquility I had been practicing. "Before we pack, I'd like to run some errands. I have to go to the bank to close my account and take care of some pending paperwork. Could you come with me? I don't really understand these modern procedures." I saw her hesitate for a moment. She probably thought it was a waste of time to accompany an old woman on irrelevant errands, but she needed to maintain her act of the loving daughter until the very end. Of course, Mommy. Let's go whenever you're ready. An hour later, we were walking towards the city center. Fabiana was glued to her phone, probably coordinating the final details of the sale of my house, while I walked in silence, looking at the streets I had walked for 70 years. Streets I thought I would never see again after Monday. Our first stop was the bank, but not to close my account as I had told Fabiana. It was to meet with Mr. Teodoro Perez, who was waiting for me in the manager's office with all the documents ready. Mrs. Goncalves, he greeted me as we walked in. I'm so glad you came. We have everything prepared. Fabiana looked at me, confused. Who is this man, Mommy? He's my lawyer, I replied with a calm that left her frozen. Mr. Perez is helping me with some legal matters related to my house. I watched as her face changed from confusion to alarm in a matter of seconds. Your lawyer? What do you need a lawyer for, Mommy? Her voice no longer sounded condescending. It sounded nervous. To get my house back, I said, looking her directly in the eyes. To prove that you tricked me into signing documents that transferred my property to your name without my real knowledge. To prove that you plan to sell it and send me to a nursing home against my will. To teach you that actions have consequences, even when you commit them against your own mother. Mr. Perez opened his briefcase and began to pull out document after document. Miss Fabiana Goncalves, he said in an official tone, I have in my possession sufficient evidence to prove that you deceived your mother to fraudulently obtain the ownership of her house. This constitutes aggravated document fraud due to the family relationship, which is a criminal offense punishable by prison. Fabiana was speechless, staring at the papers as if they were poisonous snakes. This is ridiculous, she finally murmured. My mother is confused. She's an old woman who doesn't understand things clearly anymore. I was only protecting her assets. The lawyer smiled coldly. Protecting her assets? Is that what you call this? He took out the photographs of the conversations I had found on the USB drive. He placed them on the desk one by one, like cards in a deadly game. Fabiana read her own words, written months ago. Everything is ready. The papers have been in my name for months. The old lady doesn't suspect a thing. As soon as I sell the house, I'm sending her to a nursing home and disappearing. I'm tired of pretending I love her. Each message was a dagger to her own defense. Her face turned as pale as wax. Where did you get this? She asked in a trembling voice. From the USB drive you had hidden in the planter, I replied. The planter you forbade me to touch. The planter that I accidentally dropped while I was taking care of your apartment, like the idiotic old woman you think I am. I saw her eyes fill with panic as she realized her perfect plan had been destroyed by a simple accident. Miss Goncalves, the lawyer continued, these conversations not only prove your fraudulent intent, but they also document your plan for the abandonment of a vulnerable elderly person, which constitutes an additional crime. Furthermore, we have evidence that you had already initiated sale discussions for the stolen property, which considerably aggravates your legal situation. The bank manager, who had been listening in silence, intervened. As per the court orders presented by Mr. Perez, we have proceeded to freeze all of Miss Fabiana's accounts until this fraud case is resolved. Any money received from the sale of fraudulently obtained property will be seized and returned to Mrs. Goncalves. Fabiana collapsed into the chair like a house of cards. You can't do this, she whispered. I'm her daughter. I only wanted what was best for her. What was best for her, the lawyer repeated ironically, was to steal her house and abandon her in a nursing home while you moved to another city to never see her again. The evidence was overwhelming. Her own words condemned her. Furthermore, the lawyer added, we have notified the authorities about your fraudulent real estate sale plan. Mr. Teodoro, the real estate agent who was helping you, is also being investigated as an accomplice to fraud. Fabiana's eyes widened. Teodoro too? Too, I confirmed. When a confused old woman decides to fight back, she discovers she has more resources than her tormentors imagine. Mom, she said, in a voice that tried to recover some of the feigned sweetness from before, we can resolve this as a family. There's no need to involve lawyers or the police. I'll give you the house back, and we can forget all about this." It was pathetic to see her trying to manipulate me, even in that moment of total defeat. "Forget all about this?" I asked. "Like how you were going to forget about me after Monday, when you dropped me off at the nursing home." The lawyer closed his briefcase with a final snap. "Mrs. Goncalves, the fraudulent transfer documents have been judicially nullified. Your house is legally back in your name. Your daughter's bank accounts will remain frozen until the criminal proceedings are resolved. And we have requested a restraining order, so she cannot approach you or your property." Cold, precise, relentless justice. We left the bank in silence. Fabiana walked like a zombie, processing that in a single morning she had lost everything. The money from the sale, her frozen savings, the house she thought she had successfully stolen, and her freedom threatened by criminal charges. "Why?" she asked when we reached the corner. "Why are you doing this to me?" "I'm not doing anything to you," I replied. "I'm just undoing what you did to me. I'm your daughter," she yelled, finally losing her composure. "I'm your only family." "No," I replied, with a coldness that surprised even me. "My daughter died years ago. You are just a stranger who bears her name and who tried to destroy a defenseless old woman. The difference is, that old woman turned out to be smarter than you calculated." I left her standing there on the sidewalk, her perfect world crumbling around her, while I took the bus back to my house. My real house. The house I had recovered not with screams or pleas, but with evidence, strategy, and the silent justice that can only be wielded by a woman who has lived long enough to know that in this world, no one will defend you if you don't defend yourself. The following days were like watching an empire built on lies crumble brick by brick. Fabiana tried desperately to contact me, but I had changed my phone number on the lawyer's recommendation. Her calls to my old phone were met with an automated message saying, "This number has been disconnected," just as she had planned to do with me, disconnect me from her life forever. Through Maria, my neighbor, I found out that Fabiana had come to my house on Tuesday, 3 days after our confrontation at the bank. She had banged on the door desperately, shouting that she needed to talk to me, that it had all been a misunderstanding, but I wasn't there. I had gone to visit my sister in Guadalajara for a few days, following the lawyer's advice to stay away while the final legal documents were being processed. She looked terrible, Maria told me when I returned, disheveled, with dark circles under her eyes, as if she hadn't slept in days. She asked if I knew where you were, if I had your new phone number. When I told her I knew nothing, she started crying right there in the street like a little girl. A very small part of my heart ached at the image of her like that. But I immediately remembered the words she had written about me, the old lady. "I'm tired of pretending I love her. I'm embarrassed for them to see her." On Wednesday, Mr. Perez called me with news. "Mrs. Goncalves, your daughter tried to withdraw money from an account she had at another bank, but we have located and frozen that one as well. Additionally, her accomplice, the real estate agent Teodoro, has decided to cooperate with the investigation to reduce his charges. He has confessed to the entire plan and has provided documents proving he knew the property was obtained fraudulently." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means the case against your daughter gets stronger every day. Not only do we have her own conversations admitting to the fraud, but now we have her accomplice's confession detailing how they plan to deceive you and steal your assets. Your daughter is in a very difficult legal situation. Slow but relentless justice, like a net gradually closing with no escape." On Thursday morning, while I was having my coffee in the garden of my recovered home, I saw a familiar car park outside. It was Fabiana. She got out of the car and walked slowly, as if each step took a superhuman effort. She looked exactly as Maria had described her, gaunt, with wrinkled clothes, uncombed hair, and a face swollen from crying. For the first time in years, my successful, elegant daughter looked like what she really was, a failed con artist facing the consequences of her actions. She knocked on the gate with her knuckles, not with the key she had possessed for years. The restraining order forbade her from entering my property. "Mom!" she yelled from the sidewalk. "Please, I need to talk to you. Let me explain. This whole thing got out of control. I never meant for things to go this far." She never meant for things to go this far. As if the problem was that she got caught, not that she had planned to rob and abandon me. I opened the door but did not step off my property. "You have 5 minutes," I said. "After that, I will be forced to call the police for violating the restraining order." She came as close as she could without crossing the line of my garden fence. "Mom, I know I made mistakes, but I can fix everything. We can go back to being a family. I'll give you the house back. I'll take care of you like you deserve. We can forget this whole misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" I repeated with a calm that completely disarmed her. "Is that what you call 8 months of planning to steal my house and send me to a nursing home? Is misunderstanding what you call referring to me as the old lady in your conversations? Is misunderstanding writing that you're tired of pretending to love me?" With every word I said, I saw her shrink as if my sentences were physical blows. "I was confused," she murmured. "I was stressed with work, with financial pressures. I wasn't thinking clearly. But you're my mother. I love you. I have always loved you." The same words she had said to me on the phone the week before, when she thought she had everything under control, now sounded desperate, empty, like the pleas of an actress who had forgotten her lines. "If you loved me," I said, "you wouldn't have planned to erase me from your life as if I were garbage. If you loved me, you wouldn't have described our moments together as pretending to feel affection you didn't feel. If you loved me, you wouldn't have researched nursing homes to get rid of me while you moved to another city to never see me again." Every accusation was a dagger that pierced her defense of being a misunderstood victim. "I can change," she insisted, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I can be the daughter you deserve. Give me a chance to prove it to you." "You already had 35 years of chances," I replied. 35 years in which you chose to see yourself as a victim of my motherly love instead of valuing the sacrifices I made for you. This isn't your first chance, Fabiana. It's the final consequence of all the chances you wasted." She stood there, clinging to the bars of the gate, like a prisoner begging for clemency. "You can't do this. I'm your only family. If you destroy me, you'll be left completely alone." "I was already completely alone," I answered. "The difference is that now I know it, and I prefer honest solitude to the fake company of someone who hates me but pretends to love me for convenience." "My accounts are frozen," she yelled, losing all dignity. "I have no money to pay a lawyer. I can't pay the rent on my apartment. They're going to fire me from my job when they find out about the legal proceedings. You're ruining my life." "No," I corrected her. "You are ruining your own life. I am just getting mine back." The difference was crucial. She was the perpetrator, trying to pass herself off as the victim. "What do you want me to do?" she asked with a desperation that would have moved my maternal heart a week ago. "Get on my knees? Beg you for forgiveness? Humiliate myself publicly?" "I don't want you to do anything," I replied with a tranquility that baffled her. "I don't need your remorse or your apologies. I just need you to face the consequences of your decisions like the adult you chose to be when you planned to destroy me. If you continue with this legal process," she threatened, suddenly changing tactics, "I could go to jail. Is that what you want? To see your only daughter in prison?" "My only daughter died years ago," I replied without flinching. "You are just a criminal who happens to bear her name, and criminals go to jail. It's the natural order of things." Her own words, coming back to haunt her. She had taught me that responsibilities must be met and consequences must be faced. She walked away defeated, but before getting into her car, she turned one last time. "This isn't going to end here," she yelled. "I'm going to fight. I'm going to find a way to reverse all of this. I'm not going to give up." "Perfect," I yelled back. "Fight all you want. But now you'll be fighting against someone who no longer underestimates you. You'll be fighting against a woman who discovered she can defend herself." The car sped off, kicking up dust, like the symbolic end of a relationship that had died long before this moment. That night, as I ate dinner alone in my recovered kitchen, I reflected on what had happened. I didn't feel sadness for having lost my daughter. I felt relief for having found myself. For 70 years, I had defined my worth through the love I gave to others. Now I had learned that my worth didn't depend on others loving me, but on me respecting myself enough not to let them destroy me. 6 months later, my life had found a peace I hadn't experienced in decades. Every morning I woke up in my own house, in my own bed, surrounded by my own things, without fear that someone would come to snatch away what was mine. The legal process had ended with Fabiana accepting a sentence of 2 years of probation and the obligation to pay a considerable fine for family fraud. She wouldn't go to jail, but her criminal record and legal debts would follow her for years. My house had become a true refuge. I had renovated the garden, planting new flowers that I tended to every morning with the same love I once dedicated to raising a daughter who didn't value me. These plants, at least, bloomed in response to my care. They didn't lie to me, they didn't betray me, they didn't plan to get rid of me when they no longer needed me. I found in gardening the peace I had sought in motherly love for so many years. Maria had become my best friend and confidant. We had coffee together every afternoon, sharing stories of our lives, laughing at our antics, planning little adventures like going to the market or visiting other friends in the neighborhood. I had discovered that sincere friendship between women my age was much more comforting than the feigned love of a resentful daughter. Maria valued me for who I was, not for what I could give her. Mr. Teodoro Perez had become more than just my lawyer. He was a kind widower who visited me regularly, not for business, but out of genuine affection. It wasn't romance that was blooming between us, but a mature and respectful companionship. Someone with whom to share intelligent conversations, walk in the park on Sundays, or simply sit in silence watching television without feeling the need to fake emotions that weren't there. One afternoon in April, as I was watering my new plants, I saw a family car park in front of my house. It was Fabiana, but this time she didn't come alone. An older man accompanied her, probably another lawyer trying to find some legal loophole to reverse her situation. They got out of the car and walked towards my door with the defeated arrogance of someone who knows they have nothing to lose because they have already lost everything. I didn't bother to go out to greet them. I continued watering my plants as if they were irrelevant visitors who didn't deserve to interrupt my daily routine. Fabiana knocked on the door insistently. "Mom, I know you're there. Please, open up. I've come with my new lawyer. We've found inconsistencies in the legal process. We can annul everything that happened if you cooperate with us." More lies, more manipulation, more attempts to turn her defeat into my problem. Mrs. Goncalves, the man with her, shouted, "I am Mr. Martinez. I represent your daughter in an appeal of the case. We have evidence that the previous process had irregularities. If you agree to speak with us, we could reach an agreement beneficial to both parties." Beneficial agreement. As if there were anything to negotiate after his client had tried to systematically destroy me. I finished watering my plants, put away the hose, took off my gardening gloves, and approached the door. But I did not open it. "I have nothing to talk to you about," I said through the closed door. "The legal process ended months ago. The consequences were applied. There is nothing more to discuss." My voice sounded serene, final, unappealable. The voice of a woman who had taken complete control of her life. "Mom," Fabiana pleaded with that helpless little girl voice she had perfected over the years to manipulate me. "Just give me one chance to explain everything. I've reflected a lot these past months. I understand my mistakes. I want to compensate you for all the harm I caused. Compensate me." As if a mother's love were a debt that could be paid with late apologies and empty promises. "Do you know what your biggest mistake was, Fabiana?" I asked, without opening the door. "It wasn't stealing my house. It wasn't planning to abandon me in a nursing home. Your biggest mistake was underestimating the woman who raised you. You thought she was a weak, ignorant old woman who would let herself be destroyed without a fight. You were wrong, and that mistake will haunt you for the rest of your life, not because I want to punish you, but because that's how consequences work in the real world." I heard them murmuring to each other. The lawyer was probably telling her that my refusal to cooperate complicated their appeal plans, that without my favorable testimony, they had no way to reverse the process, that she had made the mistake of turning her own mother into her most intelligent and determined enemy. "Mrs. Goncalves," the lawyer insisted, "think about your daughter. Think about family. Family problems are solved within the family, not in the courts." "Exactly," I replied. "Family problems are solved within the family. But it turns out I don't have a family anymore. My daughter died years ago, the day she decided to see me as an obstacle instead of as the mother who loved her unconditionally. The woman out there is a stranger who planned my destruction with the coldness of a professional assassin. And with strangers who try to harm you, you don't negotiate. You protect yourself. I heard them walk away, defeated. Fabiana shouted one last threat. You can't live like this forever. You can't hate yourself for hating me. But she was wrong again. I didn't hate myself. For the first time in decades, I respected myself completely. I didn't hate her either. I had simply learned to live without the illusion that she loved me, and that freedom was more valuable than any fake reconciliation. That night, as I prepared my simple dinner and watched the news on television, I reflected on the path I had traveled since that afternoon when the planter broke. I had lost a daughter, but I had gained something much more valuable: my dignity. I had lost the illusion of family love, but I had found the reality of self-respect. I had lost the company of someone who despised me, but I had gained the peace of living without lies. My phone rang. It was Mr. Perez, inviting me to dinner on Sunday at his sister's house. It's a small family gathering, he explained. And I would like you to meet my family. If you feel comfortable, of course. I accepted with a smile. I had found people who valued me for who I was, not for what I could give them. I had built a new, chosen family, based on mutual respect and genuine affection. Before going to sleep, I went out to the garden to check on my plants one last time. The flowers I had planted after getting my house back were blooming beautifully under the moonlight. Each one was growing strong because it received the right care in the right soil. Just like me, I had needed to get away from the toxic ground where they tried to plant me in order to flourish in an environment that truly nourished me. I locked the door of my house with the key that no one else had the right to use. I went to sleep in my bed, in my room, in my recovered home. I didn't expect calls from falsely affectionate daughters. I didn't fear waking up homeless because someone had sold my house while I slept. I didn't live calculating if my words or actions might annoy a daughter who was planning to abandon me anyway. For the first time in 70 years of life, I slept with the complete tranquility of a woman who had successfully defended herself from those who tried to destroy her. I hadn't screamed. I hadn't begged. I hadn't lost my dignity. I had used intelligence, patience, and cold justice to reclaim what was mine, and that silent victory was sweeter than any apology Fabiana could offer me now. The story ended where it had begun, with me tending to plants in my garden. But now the plants were new, the garden was truly mine, and the woman taking care of them had learned that self-love is the only love that no one can take, steal, or betray. Fabiana had tried to teach me that I was worthless. Instead, she had taught me that I was worth enough to defend. And for that lesson, I was almost grateful.